Manipulators aren't looking for the weakest person in the room. They're looking for the most predictable one. The person whose reactions are a dead giveaway, whose emotions flash across their face instantly, who reveals everything without even realizing it. Because manipulation doesn't start with control, it starts with observation. Before anyone tries to influence you, they watch you. They study how you react. They test your boundaries. They observe how easily your emotions are swayed. And once your behavior becomes predictable, control becomes possible. But there's one type of person manipulators really struggle with. A person whose reactions can't be easily guessed, whose emotions stay calm under pressure. A person who observes before they respond. This is the unreadable mind. Today, we're uncovering how that mindset works and why becoming unreadable makes manipulation extremely difficult. Most people believe manipulation is all about power, but the real secret is much simpler than that. Manipulation depends on information. Manipulators are information collectors. They watch how you react to criticism, how you respond to guilt, how quickly you rush to fix any emotional tension in the room. They notice when you apologize too fast, when you tolerate disrespect, when you reveal your feelings without a second thought. Every single reaction becomes a piece of data, and that data becomes their leverage. Niccolò Machiavelli observed something critical about human behavior centuries ago. He believed that true power belongs to those who understand how people actually behave, not those who assume everyone has good intentions. Simply put, the person who understands your behavior better than you understand theirs always has the advantage. The psychologist Carl Jung explained a similar idea with his concept of the shadow. The shadow represents the hidden side of our nature ambition, self-interest, the desire for control. Many of us prefer to ignore this side of humanity. We want to believe everyone is honest and fair. But Jung warned that ignoring this human darkness creates a dangerous blindness. Because when you refuse to see the potential for manipulation, you become incredibly vulnerable to it. Awareness changes everything. When you start observing behavior carefully, you stop reacting on autopilot. You notice patterns. You see intentions. You pick up on psychological signals that others completely miss. And this awareness creates something manipulators absolutely hate: uncertainty. Manipulators rely on predictable reactions. When you introduce uncertainty, you take away their advantage. Becoming difficult to manipulate requires a fundamental shift in your mindset. It means moving from automatic reaction to careful, deliberate observation. Here's the first principle: control your emotional reactions. Manipulators are experts at watching for emotional triggers. Anger, guilt, fear, sympathy. If someone knows how to push your emotional buttons, they can influence your decisions. The predictable mind reacts instantly. It gets defensive, it over-explains, it tries to fight back against every criticism. But the unreadable mind pauses. It observes the situation and decides whether a reaction is even necessary. Controlled emotions remove the manipulator's leverage. Principle number 2: reveal less about your thinking. A lot of people expose their thoughts way too quickly. They explain all their plans, reveal their strategies, and describe every idea that pops into their head. But information creates vulnerability. Once someone understands your intentions, they can start to influence them. Machiavelli believed that leaders should only reveal what is absolutely necessary, because mystery is a form of protection. The less people understand about your thinking, the harder it becomes to manipulate you. Principle 3: use silence as a tool. Silence creates incredible psychological pressure. When someone expects a reaction from you, and gets nothing, uncertainty floods their mind. The predictable person rushes to fill that silence. They explain, they justify, they try to remove the discomfort. But the unreadable mind allows the silence to hang in the air. It uses that time to listen, to observe body language, and to study the other person's true intentions. Often, silence will reveal far more information than words ever could. Principle 4 is to establish your boundaries early. Manipulators rarely start with big demands or intense pressure. They begin with small tests. A tiny bit of disrespect, a small favor they ask for, a little emotional push. Each one of these is a test to measure your tolerance. If you let these small signals slide, the manipulation slowly grows. But the unreadable mind recognizes these tests immediately and calmly reinforces its boundaries. Clear boundaries create resistance, and that resistance discourages manipulation. And principle 5, observe patterns instead of moments. Manipulation rarely shows up in a single action. It appears in patterns over time. Repeated guilt trips, repeated pressure, repeated disrespect. The predictable mind only reacts to these things as isolated moments. But the unreadable mind steps back and studies the pattern. Because once you see the pattern clearly, the manipulation becomes impossible to ignore. Warrior, if you are beginning to recognize these patterns in your own life, write this in the comments. I see the game. Because the moment you recognize the pattern, the manipulation starts to lose its power over you. But there is one final shift that makes manipulation almost impossible. It's not about being aggressive. It's not about trying to dominate others. It is simply unpredictability. Manipulators are searching for those predictable reactions. But when your behavior becomes calm, observant, and controlled, their entire strategy falls apart. Carl Jung believed that real psychological strength comes from awareness of both the light and the shadow within ourselves and others. It's about combining kindness with firm boundaries, empathy with sharp intelligence, and compassion with unwavering strength. When these qualities exist together, manipulation becomes incredibly difficult. The predictable mind reacts automatically, but the unreadable mind observes carefully. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Power rarely belongs to the loudest person in the room. It belongs to the person who understands human behavior most clearly. And once people realize they cannot predict your reactions, they cannot easily control your behavior. Because in a world full of psychological games, the predictable mind becomes a target. But the unreadable mind becomes impossible to manipulate. Thanks for watching.